one another, and the conversation itself is another skill.
One household, 20 families sharing one bathroom.
The students in groups had been given various members of industrial society. Their task was to take a series of questions like how did the industrial era affect your life? And they prepared answers as those individuals.
I'm over here working in factories all day, only bread and butter, and we only have 1 hour break.
If I was a textile workers, I would have rebelled against the textile owners.
The bridging conversation piece is so important because it was supposed to allow students to hear and to discuss the benefits and the costs.
If they want to quit, they could quit. That's where we come in, the union leaders. What if we were to let this child and had absolutely no education as teenagers today? What if we were working long hours, feeding every minute, and paying little to no money?
We've been working on our introductions, our hook, and really establishing the benefits or the costs.
You had a really great hook, and you said, that as teenagers today, could we have gone through this? But then make it clear again, the benefit did not outweigh the cost, or the cost outweighed the benefit.
If the lead isn't right, if the claim isn't right, what you have is students investing time and many times lots of work into something that has no foundation and just falls apart. What LDC provides are those markers, those steps, those stop and consider portions.
Whatever you put here, this is your first body paragraph topic. Whatever you put in the middle one, that should be your second body paragraph topic.
My hope and my expectation is that they produce solid body paragraphs that include analysis and its evidence.
What all literate folks have to do and just to navigate is that sort of, well, what do others think? What do I think? What is the evidence for how I think? And then how do I report that and communicate it in a way that's effective?
Considering the complete view. That could be a political issue that they're talking about, a current event that they're talking about. You don't have to agree with it, but at least to know what they're saying. That to me is one of the most important skills.
You guys, obviously, all do.
They had to provide reasons for the comment, but then they had to refute the comment. So you basically had to say, sure, that's true, however, and then go back to your claim, saying it's still not one of the costs to society.
In the essay, we are supposed to be talking about the opposing belief as well. So I'm not just gonna say that the idea of them is disgusting. I'm gonna say it also makes sense.
They are going to exchange drafts of the introduction, the body paragraphs, and the competing views.
What's introduction? This should have a book, but you don't really have much background information. I know what site you can. No. Oh, okay, so now.
I was really, really pleased with their peer editing skills. And I saw students saving each other's grades a little bit by saying, oh, this doesn't match. So I feel like that skill has improved.
I'm so used to you grading our papers, and it's like grading his paper. I just feel like I'm a teacher now.
LDC, when the task is right, and the mini tests are right, and the structure is right, does the kind of thing that we wanted to happen in all classes, but especially social studies, science, and English classes. And that is students move through a process toward sifting the information and then toward using the information to support their own assertion.
This is a new learning experience for me, and it's obviously a new learning experience for them. It's putting more accountability on the students to take pride in their own learning.
You get to understand the process and how to write a good essay.
Like you know the steps to follow and you know if you're on the right track?
It's been a great process and it's challenging and it's time consuming, but the results are really amazing and fulfilling as a teacher.
Right, so what were some of the things that you guys saw in this video? Starting with the student side, what were some of the student actions that you guys noticed?
They're involved, they're engaged, they're taking notes, they're doing they're evaluating and being evaluated.
Okay, so lots of different complex activities going on in there.
I like that they were cordially discussing and debating, you know, how they saw the advantages and disadvantages of the whole revolution. They didn't argue about it.
Yeah.
Did a lot of peer evaluation, like getting to grade each other's, work and say you're lacking in background, your introduction to week and stuff. So that girl felt like she was a teacher because she was able to grade from her peers.
Yeah, and that, your comment reminds me a lot of what you said earlier, where it's like, okay, you're seeing that independence from them to be able to take on some of the
Well, everything that the teacher put in place made them use their critical thinking skills. Like, it made them figure it out for themselves. I mean, she gave them like the structures, like the guidelines of how to do it, but they were doing everything by themselves.
Right, she was facilitating. And they were.
Independently
Yeah, they
learning.
owned it.
But
they used the information to.
She guided them,
But
but
that
they,
helps retention,
Yeah.
is making them do it themselves versus just feeding them information.
Definitely. And I think it's not just, okay, I'm not just learning the content about the Industrial Revolution, I'm not just preparing, for that, POC test or that LEAP test, and I've got like the facts in my mind, but actually have the skills to go through and do that research on my own and write and evaluate and do all of those things that you guys said.
and I like when the girl said she felt like she was the teacher.
Yeah.
And that's just been said in my own students a few weeks ago. I said, isn't it true that when you teach something, you learn it better? Absolutely.
And you guys remember that in the Charlotte Danielson rubric, a skill of a distinguished teacher is really to act more like, to plan so well that you can act more like a facilitator in the room versus being the person who's delivering all of the knowledge. You're setting a room up where your little people can come in and find the knowledge themselves.
And Jen, I think that's a great transition. If you'll flip over your observation sheets, you'll see on one column, there are sort of the foundations of the Common Core literacy standards, which may ring a bell with some of the teacher and student actions that you guys saw. But then on the right-hand column, there are the proficient descriptors for some of the COMPASS framework domains, which are based off of the Danielson framework. So take a minute and just sort of skim through that on your own and jot down any notes of things that really resonated with the video that are listed on.
And you guys, the Common Core standards and the Louisiana standards are the same thing. They're just calling them Louisiana standards now, but they're the same.
But it's amazing. Kids just want to sit and you tell me what I need to know. Do I need to know? When am I going to need to know? Do I need to know for the test? Like it's like pulling teeth. It's like pulling teeth.
Yeah, and reversing that habit can be super challenging.
Right,
for
when you
sure.
say, you tell me.
Yeah.
You tell me.
And of course, the question is, does this count as a grade?
Right, they want to be told.
They want to be spoken.
How much is it needed for? What's the minimum I need to do for this?
Yeah, my favorite. How many sentences in paragraphs?
Finish your paragraph. Until it's clear.
Okay, so while you guys are finishing skimming through that, so LDC is based on several principles that I think the video illustrated really well. One that it's definitely aligned with Common Core state literacy standards. Also the fact, like Jen said, like I mentioned earlier, the Louisiana literacy standards for ELA did not change a whole lot. Some of the wording was clarified, but the basic ideas there is kids doing tasks worth doing with authentic texts that are at a grade level of rigor. that those foundational principles are definitely still there. LDC distributes responsibility for reading and writing. So, this wasn't an ELA class, this was a high school social studies class where students were going through and reading and going through sources, pulling out that information and then putting it into a analytical essay. LDC, in that way, it makes the tasks central. So that task that you started with, that template that you filled in, what were the advantages and disadvantages of the Industrial Revolution, that drove all of her instruction. Everything that those students did was linked back to that task. Fourth was LDC connects reading and writing instruction, so it's not just one or the other, but you're reading to then produce that work of writing. And as you guys can see, LDC uses that backwards mapping system. Like, if you guys decide your own unit, chances are it would be aligned to a foundational task or an assessment. But LDC, everything goes back to that task. Everything goes back to what are students going to be expected to produce by the end of this unit. So LDC fosters a responsive system, so both responsive to students, they were getting a lot of formative feedback throughout this unit. They're also able to respond to each other. And then if teachers want to work together, LDC also makes it possible for teachers to collaborate online. Like I mentioned earlier, LDC encourages local choice, so it's not, okay, here, teach this in this exact way, but there's the ability to sort of plug and play your own content. And LDC strives to be teacher friendly. I will be the first to say and openly admit that creating a full module takes a really long time. So today we are not going to be focusing on creating a full module. We're just going to be focusing on creating those mini tasks, those mini lessons where students are taking one piece of the process. Creating an entire module is an awesome experience. It's a great way to really get to know your content, but it's really something that's better done sort of over the summer when you have plenty of time to sort of plan and reflect. So that's, I don't want to make people scared. We're not doing that today. We're not going to be expected to create, a 20-page document. We're just going to take it in a bite-sized piece. Okay, so during the video, you guys saw this circle often. So it lays out the 4 steps for LDC. Woo! Sorry. This board's a little too smart for me. So LDC is based off of these 4 steps, which is that wheel that you saw in the video over and over again. So it starts with what task, moves to what skills, what instruction, and what results. So what were the students able to produce, which then goes into starting that cycle again. All right, what tasks do I need to assign them in order to improve on those skills or in order to build those skills? So when you guys are designing a unit or when you're using a unit out of a textbook or a unit that maybe the state made or out of another type of curriculum, what is used as the foundation or what do you use as your foundation when you're designing a unit? What is it based on?
For me, I'm a band director, so my task is based on what piece and what elements are in that piece of music that I need them to know in order to perform that piece of music. Okay. So usually, like, if there's a complex rhythm, we'll start with just the rhythm on the board and learn just the drive rhythm, and then putting it in the context in those areas of music.
Okay, so it's based off of like a set of skills that you need your students to learn? Okay. Cool, so you've got skill-based. Anybody else who's think about building units differently?
Go ahead.
The why. Like, not only what do they need to know, but why do they need to know and how is it going to influence?
Yeah. Absolutely.
I'll look at the time I've got and look at the concepts that I want to emphasize and have class discussions over and go with that. And then cover other things with a more expedient manner.
Yeah, I think we've all been there where we've had this unit where we think it's awesome and we stick with it and it goes on for like way too long. So like, why are we still on this? Like, definitely having the right amount of time is super important. So LDC sort of keeps all of this in mind, and it lumps those reasons, it lumps the why, it lumps the content into that teaching task, so into that template. And the reason why this is done is, so the teachers and experts that created this framework, we're looking into research, and they found that the difference when you look at student work samples across the same grade level across the country, the biggest differentiating factor isn't, standardized test scores, isn't family income, isn't anything else, but it's what task did that teacher give to those students. So again, we all know that our roles as teachers are super important, but it's mostly a huge reason why it's important is because we control what the expectation is for our students. So if we set, a higher expectation and we provide them with that structure, then they're going to be able to produce more than if we set the expectation at a super base level. We are sort of in charge of setting that bar of making sure that they understand, okay, this is what I need from you and this is how I'm going to help you get there. So that's why LDC is based in a task as opposed to, just an assessment or just pulling a couple of standards. It really wants to make it clear for both the teacher and for the student, okay, this is that So in order to create a really good task, LDC's created a set of templates. So if you guys look again on the left side of your folder, you should see a sheet that has blue writing on it that says template task, and then perfect right here. You see the sheet, and then behind it you should see the packet that looks like this. So on the first on the blue sheet, it talks about task templates, and it sort of shows both in that square, the template itself, and it shows you exactly how you can plug and play. So you can insert a question at the beginning, which our teacher in the video did, how it did, what was the industrial revolution worth the cost to society? That's your question. And then the wording in black is all stuff that's part of the template, so it has to be there. So after reading or researching, and I think for our teacher template, it was primary and secondary sources about the Industrial Revolution. Write a product, in this case it was an essay, in which you explain your position, support your response with evidence from the text. So all of that wording that's in black there, the template itself, guarantees that students are going to have to read, that they're going to have to pull out information, and that they're going to have to write about it using evidence from the text. So all of that really makes sure that no matter what course you're in, that those skills have to be embedded for students to be able to answer that particular task. If you guys flip over that sheet to the other side, you'll see in the red box a task, which you might see in any normal classroom, and then a task in a blue box. Take 30 seconds and read through those two and jot down any differences you see between them. I see some heads starting to pop up. Anybody want to volunteer? What's the difference that you notice between the red and blue tasks?
The blue gives them more details, what to tune in on instead of just big, the whole picture.
And what are some of those expectations that are in the blue one?
To analyze, define, explain, compare.
Yep, definitely. So it's specifically calling out, you must use the text in this task in order to be successful. If you don't do that, then you haven't met the expectation. Whereas in the red one, is that expectation as clear? Yeah, you could get a student potentially that's using textual evidence, but you could also get one that does not, and technically, just by the wording of the task, they're meeting the expectation. It doesn't say to specifically use it. So you could get, with the red task, a huge variety of student work that actually meets the expectation that's being set there. Whereas with the blue task, you're getting much more specific actually. So students know, okay, I need to meet these benchmarks in order to be successful in this assignment. Okay, now I want to give you guys a second to look through the packet. These are the template tasks themselves. And I know we have mostly secondary folks in this room, so I'm going to direct you to sort of the main heading on top of the tasks. You'll see on the first page after you flip over the title page, I believe says kindergarten in grade 1. So obviously nobody's kindergarten in grade 1 here. You can flip over to the next one, which is grades 2 through 5. Flip over to the next one. It's grades 6 through 12. So take a look at the page that best represents the students that you work with. Keeping in mind if you work with all grades, just pick one. So along the left-hand column, you'll see the different knowledge demands that you can select from. So you could have students define, describe, explain, analyze, compare, cause and effect, procedural, sequential. I think there's a hypothesis on the next page. Evaluation and problem solution. So all of these different types of thinking that students could do sort of round the left side. Across the top header, you'll see 2 different columns. So there's an argumentation column and there's a informational explanatory column. So the main difference between this is with argumentation, you would really need to ensure that students have a variety of texts to look at that provide a variety of opinions. If every student's going to write the exact same paper making the exact same argument, it's probably not a super great task. They need to have the ability to have some flexibility there, which is where if you're going to be designing a module at any point, the text selection part is super, super critical. So having somebody with a resource that you can go to and say, hey, I'm looking at, plant growth or something like that, and I need to find, resources on different types of fertilizers. Can you help me find scientific journals that would give me those types of information? So really making sure that your texts are balanced is a huge part of making a successful task. We'll see both argumentation and informational. You're not going to see narrative on here. There used to be narrative writing tasks. They decided that that's really probably better for elementary students, but it also doesn't fit super well with the knowledge demands. It's more like a creative writing process. That does not mean you should not teach narrative writing. It's definitely part of the Common Core. It's part of the Louisiana standards. But LDC tasks are really better suited for either argumentative writing or informational explanatory writing.
I have a question. Is it generally recommended that they, like, the reading assignment, they have at least more than one source to read, or is it just a textbook? Or?
Great question. So yeah, it's usually recommended that you have more than one source to read. Difference might be if you're, say, in an English language arts classroom, and you're focusing on maybe one novel, and you're really doing an in-depth sort of like character analysis. Maybe you're just using that big text. But generally, being able to synthesize from multiple sources is definitely a demand of the Common Core standards. So having more than one is generally
Which would led up to them not being able to complete it in one in the class period.
Yeah, this is going to be, if you design a full module, it's definitely going to be, weeks worth of instruction. And with multiple days for the reading process usually. For when we get into looking at those instructional periods today, you could design a mini task that takes part of the lesson, you could design a mini task that takes, multiple weeks. It really depends on how long that text is, how rich it is, and what you want students to do.
Because even if you tell them to bring in additional sources, the ones that don't.
Yeah, So you definitely have to make the decision as a teacher, okay, am I gonna provide them with all of those sources, or am I gonna allow them to do that research on their own? And again, that's probably gonna be a different expectation depending on what grade level you're at.
And if you're gonna ask them to get resources, please give me a heads up. Before I get bombarded by 20 kids asking for the same thing, I only have 2.
Right. Yeah, making sure that there's definitely availability of texts is a huge part also. And we'll have some time to reflect on that today, because I know resources across schools are very different. I'm gonna assume that you guys probably have resources within your own classroom that, you know, a textbook that has literature in it can be just as useful as a primary source for a social studies class. You know, there's no right or wrong text to use as long as it's a rigorous enough text for that particular grade level. Right, as you guys are, yeah.
I noticed in the video, as they were dealing with group behaviors and also peer communications with one another, they said it was important that they didn't support or give their opinion or position, but rather to understand what was going on. But also in the essay, they want them to take a position and to support and to bring up the resources to give details and examples on that. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's correct. So I think the distinction that they want them to make is not to base an essay in, okay, this is what I believe, this is what I think, but based off of these texts, based off of, you know, these historical documents, this is the argument I can pull. And in this particular prompt, the teacher also added the additional demand of acknowledge others' viewpoints. So if you were arguing that, okay, I think the Industrial Revolution had more advantages than it had disadvantages, students would have to write a paragraph saying, you know, people who take the opposing view, you know, might cite X examples as that would say that it has more disadvantages. You know, I disagree based off of these facts.
I have a perfect example of that. We did essays in English, and they were arguing the use of cell phones for students and not. And of course, they're all like, yeah, we should have cell phones. And I was like, okay, I know where y'all are going. You have to acknowledge the fact that, you know, they are disruptive and they are this and they are that. So they're like, no, we don't want to say any of that. And I was like, I know it, you know, it gives validity when you acknowledge what someone else might say.
Yeah, I mean, we all know that our students can write about me for days. Like, this is what I believe, this is what I think should happen. But again, with the tasks really grounding them in that reading, in being able to acknowledge other people's viewpoints is really the important part to say, okay, if you believe that strongly about something, like find me evidence, find me proof that really supports that viewpoint so that it becomes stronger than just, this is my personal opinion. It's, no, this is based in fact, this is based in text, this is based off of this analysis that I did.
Part of that is that teaching includes to be objective, but they have to be required to give both the advantages and disadvantages. And we had the debates in class, and I assigned them their positions, whether they really agreed with that or not. So we had to look at it from the other side.
Right. Yeah, which is, you know,
Some got angry about
critical.
it, but they had to do it.
Yeah, and again, one of those, when we think about the college and career readiness skills, like being able to acknowledge both of those viewpoints and to think about them both critically and consider the merits and disadvantages of both, you know, that's you have to do that in order to be successful. So looking at these templates, did you guys have any other ideas? So obviously these are used as a basis for, you know, weeks long of instruction for creating a unit, pretty much. They call it a module, same thing, they could be used interchangeably. Did you guys have any other ideas about how you could use these templates in your classroom other than as a basis for use of instruction?
You could use them for anything. It keeps focus, it keeps what are we doing, what are we supposed to be doing, what's going on. You know, because even I come into a room and I'm like, okay, what's the plan, what's going on, who's in charge, what are we supposed to be doing, what am I gonna leave with? It just keeps it,
It keeps that foundation steady, for sure. You always know where you're going. But can you guys think of any specific assignments that you could possibly use these for?
specifics on research papers, test reviews, note-taking, anything.
So you can definitely use it as a basis for teaching those skills, absolutely. One of the things that we got a grant to do in Jefferson was to use these templates as a pre and post assessment. So if I were, a social studies teacher, if I were a biology teacher, and I wanted to see, okay, how well can my students, write a lab report, or how well can they, write a historical essay. I might use one of these templates at the beginning of the year and at the end of the year to be able to compare student work and see, okay, these are the exact domains that they were able to improve in. This is, of course, that's a reflection on my instruction. So what went well? What do I need to change up for the following semester? So you can definitely use them in that way. Another way that you can use them is rather than giving, multiple choice tests or that end of semester review, really using that as a culminating assignment where maybe you're not getting as much feedback on the writing process or on that research process, but it's really a chance for the students to demonstrate, okay, these are the skills that I've acquired over the course of this class. So there is some flexibility there. It doesn't just have to be as a basis for instruction, but you can sort of tinker with the task and make it suitable for other uses as well.
Well, these templates, these are the ones for the mini tasks?
So these are the ones for full like units of instruction, so like multiple weeks.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so we talked about tasks and the importance of designing a really good task and different uses for it. Once you've decided on a task, then you get into the what skills section. So as a teacher, what skills do my students need to be able to master, or what skills do they need to know in order to do really well on that task? And LDC, while it doesn't stipulate, okay, you need to teach these exact skills because they recognize, okay, a 12th grade classroom is a little different than a 6th grade classroom, those skills are going to be a little bit different. It does give 4 set clusters of skills that teachers should look at. So the first one is preparing for the task. Obviously, a student is not going to be able to answer the task well if they don't understand what it's asking. So this is really making sure teachers include some sort of instruction to get students to look at that prompt and really understand what it's asking. The second cluster is the reading process. So making sure that students get support in that reading process, whether it's in a particular research skill, whether it's in note-taking, whether it's in active reading, vocabulary, whatever skills students need to really understand that.
Yeah, quick question. Is it recommended that before assigning these reading tasks, should the kids go into a cold turkey or should the teacher give them some background information?
That's a really good question. I think it's really up to the teacher and up to the content. Especially if you've been using this format a lot and students are used to it, you can sort of dive into it cold turkey because chances are they have, they've developed the skills to, preview a text by looking at the title and by reading the introduction, or accessing their prior knowledge. But for younger students or for students who are doing this for the first time, usually this preparing for the task, you may ask them, okay, what is that? What background knowledge can you recall? Or does this sound similar to something you've looked at before? Sort of doing that collective brainstorming of, okay, let's put this in context of your current schema. So after the reading process, the third skill cluster is transition to writing. You notice we don't just jump straight from reading to writing. There's that transition period. So this is that planning period. How are you going to lay out your essay? That's that synthesizing period, which you saw in the video of the students doing that debate and really fleshing out those opinions and really, questioning each other's ideas and questioning all the different angles that you could take it from. And then the fourth and final skills cluster is the writing process. So, okay, can you design a solid introduction? Can you create paragraphs that are based on claims with supporting evidence? Can you craft a paragraph that acknowledges the opposing viewpoint? Can you use complex sentences? Any of those writing skills that your class in particular is focusing on would fall under the writing process. And again, this is going to be different class to class, grade to grade, depending on what skills your students are focusing on. So again, to go back to the video example, these are the particular skills that Ms. Galut pulled out. So for preparing for the task, she had her students do a task analysis so they understood what they're writing about. And then she saw that, okay, they really need assistance in note-taking. So she taught them a note-taking strategy before ever diving into the reading. So she taught them how to take formal notes. Then for the reading process, they were able to do active reading using that note-taking structure. And I guess she did an essential vocabulary mini task also, which we didn't see in the video, but helping them get through that vocabulary that they were going to need to incorporate into their essay. For the third skills cluster, she did that bridging conversation, so we saw them doing T-charts and having that debate in class to really understand all the opinions. Before moving into the writing process, we saw them really focusing on making sure they had solid plans, development, and then that editing and revising process with their peers. So these skills could take any form, again, based off of your own students' needs, as long as they sort of fit underneath this ladder. All right, so once you've got your task, you figured out what skills your students need to be able to master in order to answer that task, then you can start thinking about, okay, what instructions do I need to provide in each of these skills that I outlined? What is my lesson going to look like that addresses each and every one of these skills? So this is the chunk that we're going to focus on today. So if I know my students need to focus on note-taking, how can I identify an instructional strategy and then design a lesson around that so that they're able to use that not only in that one lesson for that particular text that they're looking at, but they're able to use that throughout the course of the semester. Or let's see, if I know that they really need to focus on broadening their ideas and broadening their evidence that are used for their claims, maybe I'm going to focus on this bridging conversation part. And in order to do that, I'm going to have an in-class debate. That's the instruction that I'm providing to meet that skill. Or if I know if they really need to work on editing and revision, like those spelling mistakes, those like tiny grammatical mistakes have to get caught, maybe I'm going to dedicate an entire class to a peer review process and teach them how to specifically look for those trouble points that the class as a whole is having. Okay, so I know I've been talking for a lot. I know we've gone through a lot of content. I want to give you guys just a second to reflect. So if you want to take notes on your own, or if you just want to think about this for a moment, I want you to consider these 3 questions. So how is planning a module or planning one of these units similar to your current planning processes? How is it different? And what are the benefits and possible drawbacks of planning instruction in this particular way? So I'll give you guys about 60 seconds to think through that or write down notes.
In theory, it is this.
What do you mean by that?
Like when I sit down and think, oh yeah, this would be awesome, and then we'll do this, and then I'll show them how to do this, and then they'll do it for 15 to 20 minutes, and they'll discuss it and all. But then I come to it's the reality.
Reality's hard, isn't it?
And it's like, come on, y'all, you know, let's read, you know, let's focus in.
I think it would just take major planning on the front end for one module.
Yep.
And like a lot of work, like holding hands for the first model. This is how we do this. This is what I mean. This is what you like a lot of, I mean, I wrote down rubrics, like you have to have like a lot, like they would have to clearly know your expectations, clearly know exactly what you're doing. And then maybe in the future after that, it wouldn't be as difficult, but it would, the first unit would be fighting and kicking and screaming. I mean, like, and so you just have to decide if it was worth the fight. You just had to prepare enough to be able to fight the fight, you know? I don't, that sounds violent. I don't mean it like
No.
It is,
like, I don't mean it in a bad way. I just mean like if you planned and you had.
This is more student led, make it
Yes.
student led, they're lazy.
Yes.
So I just want you to give it to me.
And I feel like we do a lot of, at least I do a lot of this, except changing my plan this way puts responsibility more on the students and me. And so it would be a lot of hand-holding the first time, and then when they realize that they can do it, then I feel like the second time, I didn't know what to expect, then.
Yeah, and I think some classes are like, I think like there's certain classes that would be like,
Okay, love this.
they love it. I mean, like they would just go 100 miles an hour. So I've got like two different classes in mind, whereas another class I have in mind, like I think the second time we'd still be kicking and screaming, and the third time we'd still be kicking and screaming, and like I just don't know if we would ever get past.
It's like what, kicking and screaming, thinking, I have to think.
Yeah.
I have to write.
Yeah, and I think it's really, really important to be super transparent about those possible drawbacks, or else like it's just not gonna work. And I think anybody who's ever written a module will tell you, yeah, that first one was really, really hard, not only on the planning side, but like you learn a lot about, okay, how do I set these expectations with my students?
Yes.
What does this introduction look like? So that is absolutely a part of it, without a doubt. But I think to your point, you're exactly right in that, like the more often you do that, the more often you use that structure, the more accustomed students get to it, especially if across a grade level, multiple teachers are using this particular way. So if this is a grade level expectation, or if this is, we just know in social studies class, this is the way it works, like no matter what. So it's definitely, to your point, yeah, the planning process, it takes a while. So before the end of the day, we're gonna take a look at some modules that are already done, so we don't have to like start from scratch all, from the very beginning, because we all know we don't have time for that, especially during the year. So with that in mind, does everybody have a laptop with them today that is charged?
We have power outlets that will be around the room, and we have a couple extra laptops for people to use in school.
Okay. If you don't have a laptop, I'm gonna ask you to buddy up with somebody who does. And I wanna give you a chance just to look through a full module in Friends, because we saw one executed with student actions, with teacher actions, but I wanted to see one actually fully written out. You will. Yes.
And then Nick said, did that say iPod? He says,
Yeah, I do.
So I'm gonna have you guys go ahead and training your
Is it this URL at the bottom?
Yeah, it's the URL. It should take you directly to a science module. Perfect.
you want to
With that in mind, I have a collection of small boxes of musicians across
I didn't want to. I was never very good child.
Yeah, just take a couple minutes. This would be like that teacher's final plan, choose your safe reports.
I have no idea why.
So this reminds me of the really great thing we have professional.
But at the end of the year, the students.
Figuring out, what do they need to know?
Right.
Really bad.
So, but it's okay. I understand it was like, it's helpful, but it's better than a finance sources. That would be a little bit more. We're not. It's all not. I think we finish the meeting task, what she's on, if you're gonna say. Yeah. They're good at it. She's got those great ones. We do a lot of so, you know, it's that's there. Is that
Our college is gonna change where to let
and she does great. I think, yeah, that's right.